It's that time again. Duskmourn is round the corner, and with it, 4 brand new commander decks for you horror fans to sink your teeth into. What do you mean only one's a bloody demon? The rest are humans? Why? Okay, so maybe that helps you choose which one you want. Or does it? Guys, don't go anywhere. I know you're stressed. I know you're pissed off that you wanted loads of scary monsters and you've got 3 humans. I get it. But these humans actually look like they could be a lot of fun. So hear me out. And if you're excited about Duskmourn and you're looking to pick up one of these precons, but you don't know which one you want, then please let me ease the stress of the selection process by breaking down these cards for you so that you can decide which of these commander decks is going to suit your personality and playstyle. And if you're a brand new player and you're not really sure what your playstyle is, then maybe you just go with whatever looks the coolest or sounds the most fun. And guys, if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to be giving you my personal favorite out of these 4 choices. So stay tuned for that. Right, this intro has gone on long enough already and I'm so excited to get into these cards. So without further ado, let's look at our first commander. Right guys, the first card we're going to be going over is Aminatou Veil Piercer. Aminatou is a 4-cost commander, and spoiler alert, all of these commanders are 4 costs. So Aminatou is 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 blue, and 1 black. So this is a 3-color commander, legendary creature, human wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 2. Each enchantment card in your hand has miracle. Its miracle cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 4. So we're going to get into that in a minute. First, let's look at the art. So she's a young girl. She's holding a little stick. I don't know if you guys have seen like House of the Dragon, with the little stick that they use to like herd the dragons. That's what this looks like. There's a net over her head. It's weird. She doesn't look like she's that phased by the net. But we see glowing moths around her. This is essentially the manifestation of Aminatou's powers. They come into the form of these kind of like spirit moths. But we're going to get into Aminatou's lore a little bit in a minute. She's got a little dress on. She looks quite cute. She looks like she's working for bloody Isengard, because if you look at her forehead, she's got Saruman's mark. In the background of Aminatou, you can see a staircase, multiple staircases in fact. She looks very unfazed by being in the House of Horrors. You know, she just does not give a shit. I do really like the art of this card. I think it's gorgeous. Getting into Aminatou's card, what does it do? Let's start with that first ability. At the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 2. We are manipulating the top card of our library each turn. So before we draw, we are choosing, do I like this card? Top 2 cards. Do I like either of these cards? Yes or no? If you're having that much selection over your cards, really like that. This deck's going to feel great to play. Each enchantment card in your hand has miracle, right? So what is miracle? You can cast a card for its miracle cost if you drew it as the first card you drew that turn. When you start your turn, untap, upkeep, and draw. If that card is the miracle, i.e. the enchantment, then you can cast it for dirt cheap. This is very flavorful because Aminatou in the lore, her powers is that she can see other people's destinies. So we see that in the flavor of the card. She's allowing you to see that destiny by the Surveil. So this is obviously going to be an enchantment based deck. You're going to have a shitload of enchantments, right? And enchantment creatures as well, probably, because we know those exist. You get 3 chances to hit an enchantment every turn. If you have a deck filled with enchantments, you're pretty much guaranteed to get that enchantment. Obviously, you're not necessarily going to want to draw an enchantment every turn because you're going to need other stuff like lands to play them. She's a 2/4. This is not a commander that's winning you the game herself. She is a value commander. So if manipulating the top card of your library and then cheaping out some really powerful enchantment spells sounds good to you, then Aminatou is going to be the commander for you. Right, next up we have Winter, Cynical Opportunist. Legendary creature, human warlock. Winter has Death Touch. When it attacks, mill 3 cards. It has Delirium. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile any number of cards from your graveyard with 4 or more card types among them. If you do, put a permanent card from among them onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. He is a 2/5. Right, before we break down this card, let's look at the art. So, fans of Green Day will love this card because this is essentially Billy Joe Armstrong in cardboard magic form. I mean, just look at him. He's got some fancy weapons. He has a gun. Don't give me all this no guns in bloody magic. This is clearly a gun. Got a bloody scope on it. And then he's got a weird hammer with a screen on it. Maybe it allows him to make contact with the ghosts, as in he can hammer ghosts in the face with this hammer. That's my theory. He's got a long overcoat on. Quite a cool get up here. He's got a little slutty, is that a slutty chain he's got on there? Or is that a noose? Is that a it's not a slutty chain. That's a noose, isn't it? Oh, Winter. He had a rough day. Must be hard living in Duskmourn. Lore standpoint, Winter is a survivor of Duskmourn. He's not one of the planeswalkers that came to Duskmourn to help the rabbit dude. He is actually already here. In the background, Winter is in a room filled with debris. Looks like some sort of spider webs going on in the background. So does he look phased? No. He does not. None of these characters really look phased, do they? They don't really give a shit that in a mansion filled with horror. So the card itself, this is a reanimation card. So what makes this card different from what we've seen? Well, for starters, you are reanimating any permanents, not creature, any permanent. So you can bring back artifacts, you can bring back enchantments, weapons, you can bring back creatures, whatever it is, planeswalkers. That's what makes this card different. You have to have cards of different types in your graveyard, so you need to have a nice mix of them that you can exile in order for you to put that permanent card onto the battlefield. You do this at the beginning of your end step, which is another little drawback, okay, because you don't get to use it that turn, which is a shame. But the permanent gets a finality counter on it. Some people like to fuck around with moving that counters and putting it on your opponent's stuff. If you enjoy that kind of playstyle, then you can do that. If you don't know, a finality counter means that when the creature dies, or when that card dies, sorry, it is exiled, so you can't just keep reanimating it. It has Death Touch. That's always nice in a commander. He's a 2/5. There's not really much else to say. This is just going to be a self-mill deck. Fill your graveyard as much as you can with cards so that you can take advantage of this guy, and then no doubt there is going to be other cards in the deck that really benefits from you having a shitload of cards in your graveyard. It's a graveyard deck. That's all it is. So if you like graveyard reanimation strategies, then you're going to like Winter, and if you don't, then he's probably not going to be the emo boy for you. Sorry. Okay, the next card we're going to be looking at is Zimone Mystery Unraveler. She is a 2 colorless, 1 green and 1 blue. So this one is a 2 color commander, human wizard. She has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, manifest dread. That is one of the new mechanics for Duskmourn, but we can go into that in a minute. When it enters, manifest dread if it's the first time this ability has resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may turn a permanent card you control face up. So before we get into what Zimone does, again, we'll look at the art. She's surrounded by mirrors with some creepy skulls in the background. Got some green misty vibes going on. Kind of reminds me of like the spirits in Lord of the Rings. When Aragorn goes into that cave, that's kind of what they look like. She is using her magic to summon up some sort of geometric pattern. But if we look at her little get up, she's got a cheeky little shoulder pad on one side. She only needs one. And she's got a trusty little torch on her belt. Not much more else to really say about Zimone's art. So 2 things to look at here: landfall and manifest dread. So landfall, that's already a sign that this deck is going to be trying to trigger landfall as much as you can. So it's trying to get as many lands in as possible with abilities that allow you to play essentially more than 1 land a turn. Or sack lands are great in these kind of decks, so stuff like Evolving Wilds or Terraforming Expanse. When you first play them, that triggers the landfall, and then you sack it to get a basic land, put it into play, and then that will also trigger landfall again. So manifest dread is that new mechanic, which is essentially a better version of manifest. So why is it better? Original manifest, you just grab the top card of your library, put it down face down on your board, and it's a 2/2. And if it's a creature card, you can cast it for its mana cost. The problem with this is obviously if it's not a creature card, if you get a land, an instant sorcery, then it's pretty useless, and you might have actually lost a really good card. It could basically fuck you in a way. If you can manifest dread, what this allows you to do is look at the top 2 cards of your library, and you get to choose one, so you have more control over which card is going to be manifested. Now, another interesting thing with this is that it goes into your graveyard, so this also might be a graveyard cares deck, so you can start to pick what stuff you're putting in your graveyard. This deck may have ways to grab lands or other cards from your graveyard and play them. The first card that comes to mind for me is like Lumra. Like after edits, I think something like Lumra would be great in this deck because you play her and then suddenly you grab all the lands from your graveyard and put them straight back on the battlefield. That means you would get multiple landfall triggers as well. So that's what Manifest Dread does. Now the second part of this ability is if you get to trigger landfall twice, you may turn a permanent you control face up. So this is a face down cares card. You could bet that in this precon you're going to find a lot of disguise, you're going to find morph, manifest, all this stuff that is putting cards face down on your board. You're trying to cheat them out for a cheap cost. cost. So if you can manifest dread a like really big green stompy creature, flip that up and it's like an 8 mana card for free. That's like your ideal scenario with this. So for me, this deck is going to be playing around being patient, setting up your board with these manifest dread. Get all these landfall triggers, suddenly bang, 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 bang. You reveal these cards one by one by one. Suddenly you have a huge scary board. Your opponents have used all their resources and they have no way to deal with you, and then you win the game. So if that sounds fun to you, then Zimone Mystery Unraveler may be the one to go with. Okay, the next one finally is our big scary demon, Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls. A 2 colorless, 1 black, 1 red Elder Demon. Flying, ward, pay 2 life. Whenever opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, put a 1/1 counter on Valgavoth and draw a card. We'll go into that in a minute. First, let's look at the art. This is before, I believe, he would have taken over the whole of Duskmourn, which is why he's only a little 4/4. I mean, because I know it's Zimone, I mean, these vaguely could be wings. I don't really know. He's got a glowing demonic red light from what I assume is his face. He has multiple hands. He is looking quite demonic. So what is Valgavoth doing? He's a 4/4 flyer for starters. That's always going to be nice, especially on a commander. If you can power this up, then 1-shotting people, 2-shotting people with flying commander damage is always going to be good. Ward, pay 2 life, I feel like is kind of irrelevant, especially this is a commander card. 2 life, what is that in commander? I feel like they could have made this higher, but then again, people don't want loads of commanders filled with really hard ward costs, right? So I understand that. Okay, so Valgavoth's second ability, the power up and drawing you cards ability, is only triggering if your opponents lose life in their turn. Okay, it has to be their turn. So how are we doing that? Usually probably with ways like enchantments that are punishing your opponents during their turn, maybe triggering on their upkeep and then slowly draining them of life. Creatures maybe with like burn activation abilities, so you can tap them and then burn your opponent during their turn. Burn spells in general, like instances that you can just chuck damage straight at face, again during their turn. These things are going to trigger Valgavoth, right? But let's be honest, I feel like this is maybe quite hard. Now granted, there are going to be brand new cards in this precon, which I'm assuming are going to help trigger Valgavoth, obviously. I feel like this might be quite a hard card to build around. Maybe very just you're kind of tunnel visioned into certain cards that you have to play if you want to trigger Valgavoth. I could be wrong on that, but that's just my thoughts. But yeah, if you can manage to trigger this on each of the opponent's turn, that first round, 3 turns, if you're playing with 4 players, it's going to be a 7/7 flyer and have drawn you 3 cards. So if you can do that, then great. Like, this is going to be a nice little card and you're never going to complain about a 7/7 flyer. I don't know how consistent we are going to be able to Valgavoth's ability. I will say that the ward cost would also trigger his ability. Well, even if they're destroying him, you're going to get a card, right? It's going to trigger Valgavoth before he dies. So really, you could say that this is actually ward, pay 2 life, and you draw a card, almost. But yeah, that's all there really is to say about Valgavoth. I think it's going to tickle some people's pickle, and it's not going to be for everyone. So if slowly draining your opponents of life and then buffing up your big, scary Mothman demon sounds fun to you, then Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls, may be the commander for you. So with all 4 of our Precon commanders broken down, I can tell you that easily my favorite of these 4 is Aminatou Veil Piercer. I just think this one is going to be the most fun deck to play with. I love the whole manipulating top card of your library. The art is amazing for Aminatou. I just love the flavor. Everything. It's just mwah, chef's kiss. So that would be my personal choice. Now guys, if you enjoyed our breakdown of our 4 Duskmourn commanders, then might I suggest that you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my future Duskmourn content. With that said, thank you all for tuning in, and I will catch you all in the next one. Cheers guys.